We're TTB, the Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau.
Welcome to TTB Boot Camp for Wineries, What to Expect in a TTB Audit. This segment of the series will go beyond the basics and walk you through what to expect during an audit. TTB audits are typically routine and are a part of the condition of your permit. They are meant to be educational, not adversarial. This presentation will help you maintain a compliant premises and prepare you in the event of a TTB audit. The slides for this presentation and this recording are available on the bootcamp page at ttb.gov for future reference material. You can find this page by scrolling to the bottom of ttb.gov and selecting TTB Bootcamp Webinar Series under Featured. Before we jump into this presentation, we need to review our TTB disclaimer. If you've tuned into any of the other TTB presentations in the past, this slide will look familiar. It states that if you review these slides later, the information in the presentation could have changed and suggests that you check the most current regulations, as regulations can change. Also, this information is being presented to help you understand and comply with the federal laws and regulations that TTB administers and is not intended to establish any new laws and regulations or change any laws and regulations that currently exist. In this Beyond the Basics webinar, we will be covering the following: our Tax Audit Division overview, TTB audit process, TTB common audit findings, and TTB resources. Let's get started with an overview of our Tax Audit Division. TTB audits are completed by our auditors in the Tax Audit Division, or TAD. TAD's mission is to ensure proper payment of federal excise taxes that are rightfully due and compliant with laws and regulations in a manner that protects the tax revenue and prevents unlawful activity in the commodities TTB regulates. As you will see as we go through this presentation, our audit process is designed to accomplish these things. Next is TAD's organizational chart. Our Tax Audit Division is headed by a director and deputy director. We also have 6 regional or divisional offices and a forensic analysis office. During the resources section of this presentation, we will provide the names and contact information of all the audit directors. Now that you have a sense of our TAD structure, we will go over our audit standards and how we conduct an audit. TTB audit standards are consistent with generally accepted government audit standards published by the U.S. Government Accountability Office, commonly referred to as the Yellow Book. These standards provide guidelines for producing high-quality audits and ensuring compliance with the laws and regulations. Each auditor must meet continuing education requirements, carry out their assignment with objectivity and fairness, and exercise professional judgment. In other words, TTB auditors are required to maintain professional code of ethical standards, independence, objectivity, and fairness with impartial and unbiased judgments. When we perform our audits, we want to provide a value-added service for both the industry member and TTB. We accomplish this by focusing our audits on promoting voluntary compliance by using a no surprises approach. This means that when we find issues, we immediately notify industry members rather than waiting to identify them in the closing meeting, which may be an unwelcome surprise to the industry in many instances. We perform 3 types of reviews: limited scope reviews, full scope audits, and desk reviews, which may not require on-site work. All permitted and regulated industry members are subject to an audit or review at any time, and prior notification is not required. The next several slides are going to walk through the TTB audit process. The audit process begins with notification through an engagement letter. Included in the engagement letter will be a date for the opening conference. This opening conference kicks off the field review, or on-site field work for the audit, which typically lasts anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. After the audit field work is complete, an informal closing conference is held discussing the audit findings and recommendations as well as any corrective actions that need to be implemented. To close out the audit, the management letter is issued to the industry member. The management letter contains any tax adjustments identified, any compliance violations, and any internal control weaknesses. Once a management letter is received by the industry member, they typically have 14 days to provide a response clarifying their position. We will now discuss each of these steps in more detail. As mentioned earlier, we notify industry members of an audit through issuance of an engagement letter. The engagement letter outlines the scope of review, audit objectives, document requests, and the audit period. As part of the engagement letter, we include the taxpayer information request list, which we will go over in more detail on the next slide. The taxpayer information request list may include requests for the following: powers of attorney, organizational charts, bonded areas, bonds, proof of premium payments, and/or approved notice of registration and registrations. We may also request for additional information such as chart of accounts, general ledgers, financial statements, and bank statements. The taxpayer information list request includes the following: supporting documentation for items reported on the excise tax returns, including any increasing or decreasing tax adjustments, items reported on the monthly operational reports, which include losses, destructions, breakages, transfers in bond, and shortages, electronic data downloads for removals, sales, preferably in Microsoft Excel or another workable format, source documents of removals such as bills of lading, sales invoices, and/or work orders, historical physical inventory records, current on-hand inventory worksheets, inventory variances, breakages worksheets, count sheets, and adjustment worksheets, CBMA calculation worksheets, and substantiated documents to show your eligibility and taking any credits. Lastly, claims that were filed to TTB's National Revenue Center for allowances of losses, allowance of credits, exports, and refunds. We are now to the field work portion of the audit, which begins with the opening conference. The opening conference begins with an introduction of team members, followed by a discussion on the scope of the audit, requests for additional records if required, and identification of any potential issues identified during the preliminary review. During the opening conference, the auditors will provide a projected length of time for the audit and schedule a tour of the winery. During the audit fieldwork, TTB auditors will examine information requested and any other records to support operational activities. To ensure a seamless audit, it's important that industry members maintain records consistent with the requirements of the Code of Federal Regulations. Records must be verifiable and traceable by quantity and movement of materials, spirits, wines, or alcoholic flavoring materials. Source documents must be verifiable and supported from productions to removals. For example, tax paid removals and bond-to-bond removals. After audit fieldwork is complete, the auditors will hold an informal closing conference. As noted before, this is more of a formality because all the issues have already been discussed with the industry member. Remember, there should be no surprises. Audit findings and internal controls are discussed with the industry member, including recommendations for any corrections. Any corrective actions that need to be implemented will be addressed at this time, as well as next steps to close out the audit. To close out the audit, a management letter is issued to the industry member. The management letter contains any tax adjustments identified, compliance violations, and any internal control weaknesses identified. These will be the same violations identified and brought up during the closing conference and will reference the applicable regulations violated. Management letters are typically issued within 45 business days of the closing conference, but could change based on the complexity of the audit. Once a management letter is received by the industry member, You will typically have 2 weeks to review. If more time is needed, an extension can be requested. The industry member can provide a written response, although it is not required. Lastly, the management letter could contain language regarding action against the taxpayer's permit. This action could result in a warning letter, recommendation for suspension, or permit revocation, depending on the severity of issues found. Now that we've covered the audit process, let's discuss common audit findings we see in the field and tips for you to avoid these and have a successful audit. The first two examples that we see often are failure to timely file returns and failure to timely pay the tax due on those returns. It is important to timely file returns and pay excise tax to avoid the application of penalties and interest. It is also important to timely file your TTB reports of wine premises operations, also known as the 702, and make sure those reports are accurate. The last example on this slide refers to incomplete or missing taxable removal documentation. This documentation is needed to support excise tax determination, so it's important that all information is complete and accurate. At a minimum, for taxable removals, the documentation should include a serially numbered invoice or a shipping document like a bill of lading, which contains the ship date, the product description and item number, the wine gallons removed, tax class, the name of the customer, and the ship to address. There are also issues related to incomplete non-taxable removal documentation for bond-to-bond transactions. All of the information needed for taxable removals should be included on the bills of lading for non-taxable bond-to-bond transactions, as well as the registry numbers of the consignee and the consignor. You can refer to 27 CFR 24.309 and 24.310 for more detailed requirements. The next common finding we see is failure to perform the required annual physical inventory. If you'd like to use an annual inventory period different from the period beginning July 1 and ending June 30, you can do so by submitting a notice to TTB. Another common finding is incomplete or missing inventory records. All inventory pages must be numbered consecutively, with the last page dated, signed, and the penalties of perjury statement included. Failure to pay excise tax due on physical inventory shortages is also a very common finding. The regulations require that tax on unexplained shortages of bottled wine must be paid when disclosed by inventory or otherwise. Similarly, make sure you file claims on bulk wine losses in years when they exceed certain thresholds. Last on this slide is the failure to file notice of destructions. This notice must be filed with TTB and should state the kind of wine, alcohol content, volume to be destroyed, place of destruction, and reason. As you can see, we have quite a few more common findings. Some others include failure to gauge the receipts or removals of spirits by transfer and bond, incomplete documentation for receipts or removals of spirits by transfer and bond, and failure to maintain production records. To claim CBMA credits, the winery must have produced wine, so we may request production records. And then lastly, failure to update permits and registrations and insufficient bond coverage. Now let's discuss common issues we see regarding exports. The first is failure to obtain proof of exports. Proof of export documents, such as an ocean bill of lading or a signature on the back of TTB Form 5100.11, have to be received within 90 days of the date of shipment. We are also going to inspect the documents for compliance with 27 CFR 28.250. Next is failure to complete export documents. It is important to prepare the export withdrawal from TTB Form 5100.11 and ensure that the export amounts on the form reconcile to the amounts reported on the monthly operational report, also known as 702. Don't forget to sign and date the form. Now, moving on to some findings related to the Craft Beverage Modernization Act, or CBMA, more of which we will discuss on the next slide. The first example is computing errors. Make sure you apply the correct tax credit amounts. Substantiated documents is another issue we see related to CBMA. As stated earlier, you must produce wine to be eligible for the credit, so it's important to maintain complete and accurate production records. And lastly, unsupported inventory breakages. Keep a log of your bottle breakages, including the date of incident, reason for breakage, number of bottles, cases, or wine gallons, and warehouse employee's name. Next, we're going to further discuss the Craft Beverage Modernization Act, also referred to as CBMA. The act became effective on January 1st, 2018. CBMA allows tax credits on wine imported or produced and removed by the producer or during the calendar year. To be eligible for tax credits, importers must elect to take advantage of tax credits appropriately assigned to them by a foreign winery. As a reminder, CBMA tax credits can only be transferred if the producer of the product retains title and gives a written transfer of title when the product is transferred to a bonded wine cellar for warehousing or another bonded winery for bottling, for example. The three tiers of CBMA tax credits are $1 per wine gallon on the first 30,000 wine gallons removed or imported, then 90 cents per wine gallon on the next 100,000 wine gallons removed or imported, and finally 53.5 cents per wine gallon on the next 620,000 wine gallons removed or imported. All remaining wine gallons removed or imported are not eligible for any tax credits and are subject to the full tax rate. Proper record keeping ensures that the regulations are followed accurately. Ensure there's an audit trail so that TTB auditors can clearly follow transactions starting from daily records and going to the summary record, which then can be traced to the monthly operational reports and federal excise tax returns. Also, for each operation conducted, create a dedicated record that contains all the mandatory information listed in the corresponding regulation. Finally, maintain required supporting TTB records for a minimum of 3 years. These tips will help facilitate compliance. Here are pointers to ensure you are ready for your next or maybe your first TTB audit. Most importantly, timely pay your federal excise taxes. Please note that if you pay using pay.gov, which we highly recommend, payment must be made by 8:55 p.m. Eastern Time, the business day prior to the due date. In addition to timely payment, timely file returns, including all required TTB monthly operational reports, in a complete and accurate manner. And be aware of and follow laws and regulatory requirements. To wrap up this session, we're going to provide you with useful resources for future reference. As a winery, you should become very familiar with 27 CFR Part 24, which includes regulations related to the establishment and operation of wine premises and the treatment and classification of wine. Another great resource is the Internal Revenue Code, Title 26. You can also contact the National Revenue Center or visit our website at ttb.gov. The Tax Audit Division contact information is provided for your reference and can be utilized if you have any questions that are not addressed today. Thank you for tuning in to our bootcamp series. We hope this information helps you to better understand what a TTB audit is and what to expect if you are ever involved in a TTB audit. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. To stay up to date on the latest TTB news and updates, we encourage you to sign up for the TTB newsletter. You can do this by searching for TTB newsletter in your favorite search engine and then select subscribe now. Thanks so much for watching, and make sure to check out the other segments in our Bootcamp for Winery series available on ttb.gov.
Visit TTB's official YouTube channel at USTTB.gov for more TTB-related content. And remember to click subscribe so you'll always know when we upload new videos.